Hey, let's get away to a beautiful location for a destination retreat that will transform your relationship. This opportunity is unlike anything you've done before. 2 days with Brad will give your relationship the boost it needs. Then enjoy the beautiful scenery. Go to healingbrokentrust.com for more information. Do it soon because time is limited. Are you wanting to heal your relationship? Or maybe you're not sure, but you'd like to explore the idea, and that's led you to this podcast. I'm Morgan Robinson, and my husband Brad is an international affair recovery expert. Together, we founded Marriage Solutions, a multi-location group marriage counseling private practice devoted exclusively to helping couples heal and rebuild their relationship to stronger than ever before. In fact, we're the best reviewed couples therapists in the Midwest. Check us out at mymarriagecheckup.com.
They see that negative cycle of avoidance, of emotional distance, or fighting or arguing, the pattern that they've had for years, that emotional rut that they've got into. That is more of a deterrent than the affair partner.
So they're really trying to move away from pain towards pleasure instead of really totally towards pleasure. It's really away from the pain because they don't know how to connect and have that relationship they really want. Hello and welcome to Healing Broken Trust Podcast. I'm Morgan Robinson.
And I'm Brad Robinson.
And welcome to today's show. First, we're going to talk about the kind of relationship the betrayer has with the affair partner, what's going on in the mind of the betrayer during the affair. And then we're going to talk about what keeps them from recommitting or reinvesting back into their marriage. So, Brad, why don't we talk about the typical affair relationship? What does the typical affair relationship look like?
Okay, Morgan, that's a really good question. I want to preface by saying that when I talk about this, I'm talking about what's probably generally true and not necessarily what's specifically true about every affair and every relationship that somebody has with their affair partner. And so I would just say that this is probably generally true most of the time. And this is typically what I see. But I just want to preface that because there obviously are going to be exceptions to this. So Morgan, your question is what does a typical relationship look like? I think one of the assumptions, and this definitely was for me, is that when somebody's in an affair, it's usually rainbows and sunshine.
That's what people usually think?
Yeah, that's what people usually think. And that's honestly what I thought. Like when someone's in an affair, it's a fantasy. There are people who feel that and experience that, but I wouldn't say that's probably true for a very large portion. It's not like going to Disneyland or Disney World and having a time of your life and you just love it and you're riveted by it.
So it's not always limerence.
No, it's not always limerence. And it's definitely not something that is definitely rainbows and sunshine. I remember the first time I heard somebody describe how much fighting they had with their affair partner. I just was shocked by it. I couldn't believe it.
That they would even stay with that person.
Yeah. There was a lot of fighting, and I don't remember all the particulars, but that's the one thing that stood out to me. I was like, wow, there's a lot of fighting. Huh. I was just shocked by that. And so that's kind of and it turns out, as I've learned more over the years about this, that's, in some ways, that's kind of common. It's not always the case, but it's pretty common.
The fighting and the arguing and all of that is common.
Yeah, like in the beginning of an affair, obviously, you're gonna feel good, you're gonna feel wanted. That person's gonna make you feel good, and that sort of thing. But as the relationship progresses, it kind of turns into more of a real relationship where there's disagreements and fighting and arguing, and it's not, this honeymoon type thing. It moves past that. One of the things, when people are involved in an affair, is that they're not really giving any more to the affair emotionally of themselves to the affair partner than they do with their own spouse. It's not like they're opening a door and giving something brand new that they've never given before to their affair partner that they've never given to their spouse. Often with their spouse, they've been much more vulnerable, much more intimate, much more open than they have been with their affair partner. And the main thing they get out of the affair is just feeling good about themselves.
That's really interesting, Brad, that most of the time it's about feeling good about yourself. It's not necessarily that they have this great intimacy with the affair partner. And I know we've talked a little bit about that before. Do you want to expound upon that before we go to the next?
What exactly are you talking about?
What I'm talking about there is really that they're not necessarily giving more to the affair partner than they are to their spouse. We've talked about, previously, that the relationship is not rainbows and sunshine, that it's not, this always limerence full of love or whatever and happiness. And it sounds like to me that typically people, when they get found out or when they try to turn the relationship when they bring the relationship out into the spotlight and it's found out, I imagine a lot of the mystical parts, or what's a good word? The parts of the relationship that were secret and kind of exciting sort of dissipate because they've been found out. It's not as fun anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So what's going on in the affair that keeps them kind of there? Then if they're fighting and all of that, what keeps them with the affair partner?
Well, that's a great question. I wouldn't necessarily say, there's the limerence factor that we've talked about before. And in limerence, I'm not going to go into all depth of limerence, but I'll just define it. Limerence is basically this feeling of infatuation or love sickness or romantic love that people feel often in the beginning of a relationship. That could keep people in with the affair partner. Typically, when somebody experiences that, they kind of feel like, man, I missed the mark. I married the wrong person. This is my soulmate. I didn't feel this with my spouse when we got married. We had more of a companionship love. And we've talked about that previously. What keeps them from going back into their marriage? Honestly, it's really going to be their own beef or problems with that relationship. It's not like I'm leaving you for someone else. Often what people say when they're in an affair and they're unsure about recommitting back to the marriage, they say, I'm not necessarily going to go leave you to be with that other person.
The affair partner?
Yeah, the affair partner. I might just, if we don't work out, I'm probably going to end up on my own. It's not that I'm necessarily wanting to go be with the affair partner. I have problems with us and how we've been and how we've communicated and my own hurts and my own experiences with us. And so I'm not sure if I want to be with either one of you.
And maybe just relationships in general, maybe they felt jaded or hurt by relationships and they've sort of become kind of numb to the idea of connecting. That might be one thing. Another might be, I've heard people say this to you, the affair partner needs me, so it's hard to just abandon them. So maybe that's one thing that keeps them with the affair. But how about we move to the next question? Sure. What kind of relationship does the betrayer have with the affair partner? We've talked a little bit about that, but do you want to expound upon it?
Yeah, Morgan, I would just say that they're really not typically planning on being with each other. Oftentimes when someone's involved in an affair, obviously there's going to be people who are having an affair where they're actually planning on it, but generally when there's an affair, that's not the case. They're not really wanting to do that. And there's a percentage of people who do want that. And I would say it's probably a smaller percentage. The majority of folks, I would say, they would prefer to stay married. They actually still care deeply about their spouse and their marriage. They just don't see an opportunity to have that, again, have a deeper bond with their spouse. They don't know how to get there. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But typically the average affair relationship, they're not actually even planning on being with each other. They like how that person makes them feel. That person makes them feel good. Or they make them feel wanted or desired. And that's, something that they haven't felt potentially for a long time with their primary relationship. So basically, it's just about feeling good about themselves.
Okay.
Like I mentioned a second ago, they honestly would prefer to stay married, but they don't see how connecting with their spouse or their primary relationship is possible, or they don't even know how. Then you have to factor in, they see that negative cycle that's there, that negative cycle of avoidance, of emotional distance or fighting or arguing, just the pattern that they've had for years, that emotional rut that they've got into. That's a big determinant. And that, more than the affair partner being sexy and attractive and desirable, being alluring, that is more of a deterrent than the affair partner, is that negative cycle.
So they're really trying to move away from pain and towards pleasure. Yeah. Instead of really totally towards pleasure. It's really away from the pain because they don't know how to connect and have that relationship they really want. Is that pretty accurate?
I would say that's very accurate. Morgan, they don't have a lot of hope that they can get their needs met in their marriage. And so that's really the primary reason they are unsure if they want to stay together. It's not necessarily because of how they feel for the affair partner. Obviously that happens. That comes up. That's not really what it's about all the time. And again, most feel if they're not going to be with their spouse, they don't necessarily want to be with the affair partner either. It's not like I'm leaving for greener pastures. Some do, but I would say most don't, feel that way. Again, like I mentioned, the affair relationship is shockingly full of fighting, arguing, a lot of mistrust, distrust. What's also shocking is that they're so easy and quick to betray each other.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're often willing to betray each other. I've seen that happen a lot, Morgan, where they get pissed at the affair partner and then they're ready to come back home, be back in their primary relationship, their marriage. And then again, I would just say that the individuals who have an affair really want to connect to their spouse, but they don't know how. That's really what it's about. I would even say that about limerent relationships. The individuals I've had who've successfully worked through limerent affairs, and you can learn again more about that in the limerence episode or the one on 10 types of affairs. And for those of you who are living it and have lived it, you know how tricky that is. I would say they deep down really do want to connect to their spouse, but they just don't know how. And the negative cycle and those factors and all that goes into play.
So, Brad, why do they hesitate on totally committing back into the relationship?
I'm going to use different clients' words that I've heard, and I'm going to kind of use their language to describe this. So what would they say on why they hesitate in totally committing back into the relationship? They would say things like, I feel unworthy or unlovable all the time. I haven't felt good enough for a long time. They would also say this, and this is really important. Can I be forgiven? Will I always be on lockdown? I don't think I'll actually be good enough to make you forget. Is our relationship too tainted now? Is even coming back possible? Sometimes they would even say they feel they can't reassure their spouse because of what they're doing, because, they're not ending the affair. So it's like, how can I reassure you and come back? There's such a hole in me. I know the right thing is to probably come back to you and work on it for our sake, and it's just the right thing to do. But there's such a hole in me left in me by our negative cycle and our pattern that I don't know if I can really stop this affair. And again, it's not that I want to be with them, because I would choose to ultimately probably not be with them anyway, but that person just makes me feel good about myself. They feel like they can't really reassure their spouse because, they're still doing it. It's like promising to never gamble again as you're pulling the slot machines,
Right.
It's like, well, I can't
That's
really, I can't really give you that full reassurance that you need that I'm going to quit gambling because I'm pulling the lever right now. I'm pulling the lever. I'm not ready to quit yet. Here's what else they would say. They would say things like, I don't deserve you anymore because you're making all these changes and growing, and I'm a wrecking ball breaking crap up for us.
Wow. That's some great imagery, really.
I'm being that wrecking ball because if something happens, it won't be as big of a hit. I don't ask, so basically if I'm a wrecking ball and push you away when we don't work out, because I don't have much faith that it will, because I've been hurt. Now you're hurt. I don't have this confidence that we're going to be okay. So I'm this wrecking ball right now to push you away, to actually, because I care about you, to actually make it easier on you. So if you can start withdrawing too, you're not going to get us hurt by all this.
The disconnect will be easier because I've just been hard on us. And if I just make myself look so ugly and terrible and awful, it'll be easy for you to let me go. And it'll be easy for this relationship to dissolve, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I often hear people say is, I don't ask for, their help because it's not right for me to ask or expect receiving that help because of what I'm doing. It's hard to tell you my needs and ask you to be there for me because of what I'm doing. That's not fair to you. So those are some things that I've heard people say before that causes them to hesitate in, kind of fully recommitting.
That last one sounds like a lot of guilt and shame. It's like, I can't ask for wants and needs because I'm so terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That's how they feel.
Well, and here's the thing, to successfully recover from an affair, it cannot be, okay, I did this, I hurt you, I betrayed you. now I've got to spend the next X number of time, years, months, whatever, kissing your butt, making it up to you. That just does not work long term. Like that, sometimes people talk about that. I've heard other people talk about it. It just doesn't work because, at the end of the day, it's got to be about both people being able to depend on each other emotionally. People often get into an affair because they don't feel like they can fully count on their spouse to be there for them emotionally because of that negative cycle. If you don't have that confidence that your spouse will be there for you, it's just hard to really be vulnerable and let them in your inner world and count on each other. And so you have to have both people there for each other emotionally. One of the things often is that once somebody has an affair, they think, man, I screwed up so bad. I got to really go to you and focus on you. It's wrong to talk about my needs. I see how hurt you are. And maybe in the immediate crisis and aftermath, they're right. Maybe it's like, maybe they're right. I just really hurt you right now and I see you're suffering. I can't ask you to be there for me. But to have a successful marriage, you have to really think and feel and believe that you can. But you only get that through couples therapy. You're not going to get that on your own trying to work through this. You're just not going to get there on your own. Like, you need to get good help. You need somebody who does emotionally focused couples therapy, who's got training in that, certification in that. You want to go with the best because right now your marriage needs that. We're available.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time today, but what do they feel will happen if they stay with their spouse? Because that's another question that we have.
Sure, yeah. What they think if we stay together, this is what they're thinking is going to happen. They're thinking in their head, like, is my spouse going to make me pay for this?
Forever and ever.
Forever. Is this just going to be a part of their ammo that they have? Because they've used ammo before. Is this going to be new ammo? They're going to say things like, it feels like I'm just going to have to prove myself to you. And that puts me back where I was in the first place before all this stuff happened. Like, you didn't really trust me before. I didn't do anything wrong back then, but we weren't really connecting and feeling close. And so you were always kind of critical of me or upset with me. So it feels like I'm just going to have to prove myself to you. And that puts me back where I was in the first place. They'll often say things like, if our marriage isn't strong, will I have to go to someone else again to get my emotional needs met? So if we don't repair and patch up what was going on and make us stronger than we were before, am I going to do this again? And I don't want to do this again.
So Brad, at this point, how do they feel about their spouse?
Morgan, often what I hear is that they'll say things like, at the end of the day, in spite of all of our problems that we've had in our relationship, you are a good person. And there is love there for their spouse. And there is care for their spouse. Sometimes they'll push their spouse away again. Like we talked about the wrecking ball, they'll push their spouse away during the affair so that their spouse won't get hurt, so that they can try to have a cleaner conscience. Like if I push you away, if I start arguments, if I start fights, we're arguing and fighting, then I can use that as justification to go have an affair. But at the end of the day, they really do believe their spouse is a good person. That deep down they know their spouse is a good person. They know their spouse isn't evil. That's how most people, I would say, in a word to summarize it, that's what I would say most people, how they view their spouse. And again, sometimes they'll try to push their spouse away while they're having an affair so that when it gets discovered, if it does, it'll be an easier impact on their spouse. And then others will be kind of loving, and that's their way of trying to clean up their guilty conscience. They're trying to manage guilt either way. Like, I'll push you away to manage guilt, but if I can be really sweet and loving and endearing while the affair is going on, and and you'll never detect it, then I won't have to live with guilt because you'll never find out. And so they're both trying to manage their guilt in either strategy that they take. But they really do feel like their spouse is a good person. And, and this is what someone said once is, even if I wanted to, I can't stop loving you overnight. Like if we weren't together, even if I wanted to, I couldn't stop loving you overnight. And that's what someone said when they were still seeing the affair partner. Like, there's still a lot of love there. And as you guys can tell as you're listening to this is complicated stuff. This isn't easy stuff. And so if you guys need help, we're here. Go to healingbrokentrust.com and you can find out more information about working with us. And I appreciate your time and you guys can make it. You can do this.
Absolutely. You can also give us a call at 918-281-6060. You can talk to one of our client care coordinators and book your retreat. It's an intensive one-on-one retreat. So it's just one couple and Brad. Typically people come in for 1, 2, or 3 days, whatever availability we have. And you're welcome to come. We have people coming in from all over the country. So 918-281-6060. You can check us out at healingbrokentrust.com. Have a wonderful week, guys. Well, have you booked your retreat yet? Make sure to go to healingbrokentrust.com for more information and call 918-281-6060 to book your retreat today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healing Broken Trust podcast. As always, this information is for education and entertainment purposes only.